Right now, every single container ship carrying goods from Asia to the east coast of the United States has two choices. Sail 8,000 miles south around the tip of South America through some of the most dangerous waters on Earth, or cut through a 51-mile canal in Panama and save 3 weeks of travel time. For over a century, the United States controlled that canal. American engineers built it. American soldiers defended it. American laws governed it. But today, the entrances to that canal, the ports on both sides, and the infrastructure that makes it work are owned and operated by a company headquartered in Hong Kong and closely tied to the Chinese government. President Trump stood in front of the cameras on January 12th and said the United States would take the Panama Canal back. He did not say how. He did not say when. He said it was going to happen. By the end of this video, you will fully understand how the United States lost control of the most important shipping lane in the Western Hemisphere, why China now controls the entrances to a waterway that carries 6% of global trade, what it means when Chinese port operators can see every American warship that passes through, and why the country that built the canal no longer has the legal authority to do anything about it. Let us start with the moment the United States actually lost the canal, because most Americans think it happened in 1999 when the treaty expired. It did not. The United States lost control of the Panama Canal on November 25, 1997, 2 full years before the handover, when a Hong Kong company called Hutchison Whampoa signed a 25-year concession to operate the ports at both ends of the canal. Hutchison Whampoa is not just a private shipping company. It is one of the largest conglomerates in Asia, with deep financial and political ties to the Chinese Communist Party. The man who ran Hutchison Whampoa at the time, Ka-shing, is one of the wealthiest individuals in Asia and has spent decades building infrastructure projects that align with Chinese government strategy. When Hutchison signed the deal in 1997, they gained control of the port of Balboa on the Pacific side and the port of Cristobal on the Atlantic side. Those 2 ports are the gateways to the canal. A ship cannot enter the canal without passing through a port controlled by Hutchison. By the time the canal officially transferred to Panamanian control in 1999, the Chinese company already controlled the most valuable pieces of the operation. Now, here is where it gets really interesting. The Panama Canal does not work like a normal waterway. Ships do not just sail through. They get lifted 85 feet above sea level by a system of locks, pulled across a man-made lake by locomotives called mules, and then lowered back down on the other side. Every ship that transits the canal has to stop at the ports, wait for a pilot, and follow precise instructions from Panamanian and port authorities. That means the company running the ports has visibility into every ship that enters, every cargo manifest, and every piece of military hardware that passes through. When a United States Navy aircraft carrier transits the canal, Hutchison port workers are standing on the dock watching it go by. When American military supply ships carrying equipment to the Pacific pass through, Chinese port operators have advance notice of the timing and the cargo. This is not a theoretical concern. This is the reality of how the canal operates today. Stop and think about what that means for American military logistics. The United States Indo-Pacific Command, which oversees all American forces in the Pacific, depends on the Panama Canal to move ships and supplies quickly between the Atlantic and Pacific fleets. If a crisis erupts in the South China Sea or near Taiwan, the fastest way to reinforce the Pacific Fleet is to send ships through Panama. But every time an American warship makes that transit, it passes through ports where Chinese-operated cameras, cranes, and logistics systems are recording the movement. The intelligence value of that access is extraordinary. China does not need to plant a spy in the Pentagon when it can simply watch American ships pass through a canal it already controls. There is another angle that almost nobody is talking about. In 2016, Panama completed a massive expansion of the canal, adding a third set of locks that can handle ships nearly twice the size of the original design. That expansion cost $5.25 billion. The largest ships in the world, the so-called new Panamax vessels, can now pass through with room to spare. Who financed a significant portion of that expansion? China. Chinese state-owned banks provided loans. Chinese construction companies handled part of the work. And when the expansion was completed, the new locks immediately increased the value of the ports that Hutchison already controlled. This is the part where the conversation fundamentally changes. Because the issue is not just intelligence or logistics. The issue is leverage. In a conflict between the United States and China, what stops the Chinese government from instructing Hutchison to delay American ships at the ports? What stops them from creating bureaucratic obstacles that slow down military transits just enough to matter? The answer is nothing. There is no international law that prevents a private company from enforcing stricter safety checks, scheduling delays, or labor disputes that happen to coincide with American military movements. And because Hutchison operates under a contract with the Panamanian government, not the American government, the United States has no direct authority to intervene. Now, here is where this starts affecting people who do not follow geopolitics. Every product you order online that comes from Asia and gets delivered to the east coast of the United States probably passed through the Panama Canal. Every container of electronics, furniture, clothing, and machinery that moves from Chinese factories to American stores goes through that route. If China wanted to pressure the United States economically, it would not need to fire a shot. It could simply instruct Hutchison to slow down port operations just enough to create supply chain delays. American consumers would see the effects within weeks. Prices would rise, shelves would empty, delivery times would stretch, and the entire disruption would look like a normal port labor dispute, not an act of economic warfare. President Trump understands this. On January 12, 2026, he said the United States would take back the Panama Canal. He did not specify a legal mechanism. He did not outline a plan. He said it was going to happen. That statement created immediate confusion because, under international law, the United States cannot simply seize the canal. The 1977 Torrijos-Carter treaties permanently transferred sovereignty over the canal to Panama. Those treaties were ratified by the United States Senate. They are legally binding. The United States gave up its rights to the canal in exchange for a promise that the canal would remain neutral and open to all nations. Taking the canal back would require either Panama agreeing to a new treaty, which is not going to happen, or the United States violating international law and using military force to occupy Panamanian territory, which would be a catastrophic diplomatic and legal disaster. But here is the problem. Trump's statement was not aimed at international lawyers. It was aimed at China. The message was clear. The United States is not going to tolerate a situation where a Chinese company controls access to the most important shipping lane in the Western Hemisphere. Whether that message leads to action and what form that action takes is the question that matters. Is the United States preparing to pressure Panama into renegotiating Hutchison's contract? Or is Trump signaling that the United States will use economic or military leverage to force the issue if China does not back away? One side says this is a bluff designed to get China's attention. The other side says Trump is serious and the United States is preparing a legal and economic strategy to break Chinese control. Write your answer in the comments, because the people who say this is negotiation theater and the people who say Trump is preparing a takeover are about to have a very serious argument under this video. And it gets worse, because Panama itself is now in an impossible position. The country depends on revenue from the canal. The canal generates roughly $2.5 billion per year for Panama's government. That is 6% of the country's entire GDP. Hutchison's port operations are a critical part of that system. If the United States pressures Panama to cancel Hutchison's contract, Panama loses the infrastructure and expertise that keeps the ports running efficiently. If Panama refuses, it risks American economic retaliation, which could devastate the Panamanian economy. Panama's president has already issued statements saying the canal will remain neutral and under Panamanian control. But neutrality is a meaningless concept when one of the world's two superpowers is telling you to pick a side. So here is the question that matters. The United States built the Panama Canal over a century ago. American lives were lost constructing it. American money funded it. American law governed it for 85 years. Then the United States voluntarily gave it up in the name of international goodwill and Latin American sovereignty. Now, the country that controls access to that canal is not Panama. It is China. Is this the moment when the United States realizes that giving up strategic infrastructure in the name of diplomacy was the single worst foreign policy decision of the 20th century? Or is this a test of whether international law still matters, and whether a treaty signed in good faith can survive when the geopolitical situation changes? One side says America should take the canal back by any means necessary because the stakes are too high. The other side says violating a treaty and occupying a sovereign country would destroy American credibility forever. Write where you stand in the comments, because the people who say take it back and the people who say respect the treaty are going to have the most important argument on this channel.